Think of a battle America has had in the past. You might think of the Battle of Gettysburg in the Civil War, one of the most dangerous battles in America's history, killing over 30,000 people in less than 3 days.
The two sides of the Civil War were the Union and the Confederates, led by Ulysses S. Grant leading the Union and Robert E. Lee leading the Confederates. Both were great leaders in that war. Robert E. Lee, though he lost the war, was a very successful general and is still honored as a person after that war.
Lee's life was filled with determination and victories, which made him who he was. So this is Lee's story, tragedy to triumph.
Lee's story starts in Stratford, Virginia, his place of birth, where he was raised under the care of Anna Hill Carter and Henry Lighthorse Harry Lee. His father served as a cavalry leader during the American Revolution. Sadly, Lee's dad went to jail for bad debts and died when Robert was very young.
Robert then had to be raised by his mother and all of Robert's 6 siblings.
On top of all that, Robert wanted to go to college, but was not able to due to lack of funds. Robert's family wasn't exactly rich.
But his mom had a huge impact on Robert's life. She pushed him to do good and succeed, which later on in life would do a lot for him.
As Lee grows up, he is unable to go to college, so he tries to sign up for the military at the United States Military Academy at West Point.
Lee was at top of all students in his classes. At the end of the first year, he was given the title of Cadet Staff Sergeant. He graduated top of his class.
While he was gone, his mom was coming ill, and Lee tries his best to keep her alive, but she eventually dies in July of 1829.
After the death of his mom, he goes on to plea the calls of different forts. Nothing very important happens at the forts except for when he went to Fort Pulaski.
He met a special someone by the name of Mary Custis, who later gets married with Lee on June 30th, 1831.
In 1846, Congress declares war with Mexico. On September 21st, Captain Robert E. Lee is sent out to help General Scott flank the enemy side. Lee's recommendations for the flank worked, and he was later promoted to major.
Over time, he earned the rank of lieutenant colonel. Lee stayed in Mexico until May of 1848.
It's 1861, and something is happening among the states. February 1st, 1860, a year before the Civil War, Lee was promoted to full colonel and was given command of the 1st Cavalry for the South. Jefferson Davis and Lee talked, and before you knew it, he was a part of the Confederacy.
At the time, Jefferson Davis was the leader and president of the Confederacy. He called the shots for the South side.
Later, he is offered the command of Virginia's military and naval forces with the rank of Major General, and of course, he accepted.
He joined the Confederates, but only for Virginia.
See, Robert didn't join the Confederates because he wanted slavery. He actually hated slavery. It was because his home was a Confederate state. If it weren't for his love for Virginia, he would have probably become a Union soldier.
Anyways, Lee was setting up his army and stayed behind to strategize. He was putting military strategy into the Civil War. He would call his forces the Army of Northern Virginia.
During the Civil War, Robert E. Lee had to face McClellan in most of his battles. Their first encounter was the Battle of Antietam. McClellan and Lee's forces fought at Antietam, and it was the most bloody day in America's history.
Though Lee fought well, he was forced to retreat and defend Fredericksburg from an incoming attack.
Lee then fought another Union general by the name of Burnside, but then again was unable to defeat Lee's strong forces.
The Civil War challenged Lee, but he would fight back with not only his strength in his army, but his battle tactics. He fought his battles smartly, and the enemy team would not know how to respond.
After the fight with Burnside, Lee was then pushed again toward Chancellorsville and was outnumbered 2-1, but Lee does not give up that easily.
Despite his odds, Lee was victorious. He pushed up into North Union turf and fought against General George Meade in the iconic Battle of Gettysburg.
The Battle of Gettysburg was a devastating fight that has to be one of the most bloody battles fought in America's history. Both the Union and the Confederacy forces were drastically wounded, but sadly, Lee's side had to retreat due to loss of men.
This loss for the Confederacy costed a lot, as it was the turning point of the war that gave the Union the upper hand.
Lee rode to Petersburg on his horse to find that it was captured by the Union, so he had no other choice but to head to Appomattox.
When he had arrived at Appomattox Courthouse, he was met by the Union. Ulysses S. Grant had met Robert E. Lee inside. Robert took out his sword and gave it to Ulysses, symboling Robert's surrender to the Union.
Because Lee had given command over the entire Confederate army, this meant the Confederates had given up. The Union won and the Civil War was over.
When Lee saw Grant, he knew he saw him from somewhere else, other than the battlefield. Surprisingly, Lee and Grant had gone to the same military academy.
And in that academy, Lee was one of the best in his class, while Grant was at the bottom of the ranks.
Things changed, and now Lee was surrendering to the worst student in his former academy. The world is pretty small, ain't it?
Now it's time for some fun facts about Robert E. Lee and the Civil War.
Back to Lee's life. After the Civil War, Lee was given the privilege to live at Washington University and become president of it.
He lived on the property of the university, and he was president of it until his death.
Lee was very kind to the colleagues, and they were really respectful to Lee. People treated Lee with respect, but they did have in mind that he fought for the Confederacy.
All was going well with Lee until September 28, 1870, when Lee had a stroke. He knew death was near. He was going to pass away soon.
2 weeks later, on October 12th, 9 a.m., Lee died in Lexington due to the effects of pneumonia, an inflammatory condition in the lungs which makes it hard to breathe.
Lee's last words spoke. "Tell Hill he must come up. Strike the tent."
His resting place can be found in a coffin underneath Lee's chapel at the now called Washington and Lee University.
Traces of Lee remain in several states in America.
But sadly, some of his statues have been removed in 2017 due to his relationship with the Confederacy.
Even though Lee's history is slowly being erased, those who remember Robert E. Lee's stories and his amazing life should always remember this man as one of the most intelligent generals America will have in its history.